Hey folks, it's Wade the Shoe Dog. Welcome to Shoemakers Academy. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're not down in the workshop. We don't have fancy green screen. This is my office. This is where we do a lot of the work. Um, but today, the title of this video is called Nightmare Scenario, and this is a case. Um, there, full disclosure. I don't know how this ends. Um, but this is a client that's come to us and needs some help. And when we first looked into the situation, it was one of those, oh man, I'm not sure how we're going to be able to help. Um, but at least we can offer advice and get this young gentleman started, um, and just get him started. So let's roll back to the beginning and so you do know, of course, that we do consulting help for people. It's not just books and courses. Um, in fact, most of my time actually is spent helping people with their brand getting started. So if you have a brand with a problem or a new brand and you need help, or just want to hear, someone in the industry say that's a great idea or that's a bad idea, then just you don't hesitate to reach out. It's the shoe dog at shoemakersacademy.com. Or if you look on the website, there's plenty of links where you can schedule a chat with me. It doesn't cost anything for me to just say hi and talk about what your situation is. So how this starts, this probably over a year ago, actually, this young man contacted me. And when I say young man, he's in his 20s or late 20s, professional, right? He's got a career, and he launched this footwear brand just on the side because he wanted to. And he found a factory on Amazon, and you've heard me talk about that situation, why you shouldn't do that. And this young man um, fell into exactly the trap where he got in, contacted somebody on Alibaba, and they told him all the things he wanted to hear, and showed him a nice picture of the factory, and basically they got started. And the guy, the project manager on the factory side, was a really, by all accounts, a really nice guy. Befriended the client, took care of him, did all those wonderful things, made him feel confident that it was going to work, and on and on and on, and then totally screwed it up. So what happened, of course, is that, and then this is before they came to us, is that he's a hyper intelligent human being, very successful in his other career, didn't know much about footwear, and got into a specific type of footwear that has some unique challenges, and the factory wasn't ready for that challenge, and neither was he. So when it came to develop the last, it wasn't quite right, and they went ahead and got into production and opened a size run of equipment, and it wasn't right, and they didn't do enough test development to make sure that the whole, number one, that your sample size is right, but also didn't check everything out to make sure that the production run of equipment was right. So basically, they sort of made the first production run of shoes, and they were okay. They sold through, but there were some issues, and they ended up having to open another set of equipment, and outsole equipment, high quality. And this, we're just talking about a regular rubber capsule, right? Just one single mold, looks like a waffle iron, right? Kind of your Air Jordan style, right? No fancy molded cushioning, just a regular rubber capsule, which if you watch the channel, you know what that is. So, but they got a good price, and $1,000 a size. Maybe that's too good a price. When I go to a really high quality mold shop, we expect to pay 1,500 a size. And now there are things you can do to limit the sizes you need. That's a whole other story. But he basically got into it for, I don't know, 15 or 20 thousand bucks worth of equipment, and then had to remake it. So usually that's kind of a kill card already. That equipment sort of fail and have to start over again. But hey, this guy was dedicated to it. He wanted to do it. So excuse me. So they opened up the equipment, and then they had to open it again. So we're getting in pretty deep. And the and also, just so you know, the client never went to the factory, right? Just trusted that what was advertised on Alibaba and whatever the guy said, this was it, right? So the first batch of shoes, they're okay. They need to make some modifications. The client is has to do 100% QC when he gets them to his house. So he's got, I don't know, 1,000 or 1,500 pairs, and he has to go through every single pair to check it. And then, of course, if the shoes are now sitting in your living room or your garage or your basement, there ain't a lot you can do about it. Things that are sort of easy to fix inside the shoe factory are really could be quite difficult to fix. And also, if you're not an expert in that, then you're gonna have problems. So this poor guy stayed up nights and weekends. I'm sure his wife wanted to kill him, to repair the shoes and make them sellable. And how many of those he had to throw away, I can't tell you. He's losing money is the problem, right? So this is where I come in. The client reaches out to me, and he literally, you've probably heard me say this before. He says to me, Wade, I can't sleep at night. And why is that? Well, they're finishing a production run of shoes, and they're on the water, and I don't know if they're good or not. And that's, if you've seen the video where I say I hate this is that situation. So the factory had just said, hey man, we'll take care of the inspection. In fact, I think they actually billed him extra for the inspection that they did. And well, needless to say, the inspection, it was bogus. The shoes arrived and there was a lot of problems. And it's pretty clear when I examined shoes from the first production run to the second production run, it's pretty clear that these shoes were made by different factories. Everything was different about it. So, and if from the outside, you could see there was some difference, but even know that the equipment, actually it was different equipment too, because they had to remake it. Now, excuse me. So when I'm looking at the shoes, I can see that there's differences and there's a lot of problems. So the account manager on the Alibaba side obviously did not have control over the shoes. They subbed them out. They went to another factory, and specification, what is that? Who follows what specification? So the second batch of shoes really was not great. Now the client, that thing where you get held hostage, and you believe everything that your hostage, your captor tells you. It's called Stockholm syndrome, or the other thing is the sunk cost fallacy, meaning, okay, so now you're being held hostage, and you believe in it, right? And your hostage taker is the one taking care of you, and you rely on them to take care of you, but yeah, don't ever have that with a shoe factory. At least not one that, not one like this. And the other thing is the sunk cost fallacy, which is I'm too far in, I can't turn back now. So you can always sink more money in, and this is a little bit where the client kind of had the double handcuffs of, he's my bro, he's taking care of me, and I'm too far in to turn back. So not looking good. So generally in a case like that, we would say you got to run, you got to move, you got to get your equipment out of the control of that original factory, and get it to a mold shop that can check it, and also just you get control of it. Because if you open equipment with a factory, then you're at their mercy. If you say I don't want to make the shoes with you, they're going to take your equipment and either ransom it back to you or throw it away or whatever. You're going to have a hard time getting control of it unless you're working with honest, outstanding people. In which case they say, "Go ahead. Where would you like to move the equipment to?" And that happens just about 0% of the time if you're not working with an honest factory. So when I tell a factory, "Hey, I'm moving the equipment," they do it because we have a great relationship and they know that I'm going to bring more business down the road. But if it's a one-time deal with a one-time customer, they don't care, right? You're not going to get that kind of treatment. So Um, so now we're trying to help, and we're brought into the case, and you guys have met Gary. You've seen him. Gary goes to investigate, and he visits the factory, and he's looking around, and he's like, "Okay, where are the shoes? Oh, those shoes are being made at a different factory." And I'm like, "Okay, so this is a great case where the it's been lied to or deceived or made an excuse to say that this nice looking factory is actually not where your shoes are being made. They're being made somewhere else. Like they subbed them out for whatever reason. Hey, maybe they got busy. Great. But if they sub them out to a place that they don't have control over or you didn't agree to it, then here we go. So Gary goes to visit. And if you saw that video, go look it up. It's called I Hate This. You can see what a really crummy shoe factory looks like. And you've seen on our channel what great factories look like. Gary and I and Jack have toured wonderful factories that make high quality shoes, the ones that we use for our clients. So I really want to get this project into that kind of factory. So Gary investigates, finds out, yeah, the factory he thought he was in, he's not in. And the client has still never been to these factories, so he just doesn't know. And that's a tough situation. So long and short of it is, we're trying to oversee a final production run from the old factory, and we've brought in a real inspection team. So the third party inspector is looking over the shoes of this final production run, and they suck. They're not good. I think it was somewhere 50%. And in that case, you say, okay, listen, if the shoes are not so far gone, you can do some other processes, get them back on the last, reheat them, untwist them, clean them up, and try to get them ready. And it sounds like the second inspection yielded a few more shoes. And this is actually goes back to the purchase terms discussion. And the factory asked for, I think it was 100% up front. And if that's the case, then you have zero leverage when it comes time to inspect. Because if your inspector shows up and the shoes are rubbish, you've lost 50%. Okay, you haven't lost it all, and you'll be inclined to, I paid for it, you might as well ship them because you're into the sunk cost fallacy, and maybe I can do something with these shoes. In which case, you just paid to ship them and duty and all that. But you're already all in, so it's really tough to say I don't want these shoes because you already paid for them. In this case, like I said, the client agreed to these purchase terms, and now it's just a question of the factory could sort of reprocess, but are they actually, knowing that this is the end of the line, are they going to actually remake the shoes? Probably not. So is the customer going to be able to get his shoes, the whole production run of shoes out of this factory? Unlikely. Unlikely. Now, that's tough. How you get around that? There's a bunch of shoes that are going to get thrown away. Probably 500 pairs. That sucks. It's a lot of money. It's not the end of the road. So the one thing is the factory has agreed, and we'll see if they deliver on this promise. They have agreed to release the molds, and that way, our team on the ground can designate a mold supplier that we work with and trust, get those molds back into the client's control, right? Because if they're sitting at the factory or the factory subcontractor, and you don't have a person on the ground that's invested into that procedure or process, you're not going to have control over your equipment. So yeah, you paid for it all. The lasts too, he paid for all that stuff. But if the factory just does one of these, you're not going to see that equipment. It's going to be gone. So the good news is, and I know I started with nightmare scenario, and I'm glad you're still with us to hear this story. But the good news is the factory has agreed. Now, whether they deliver on this promise, I can't tell you. I don't know. We are going to see. And that's where the story kind of ends for now. I mean, this is part one. But there's a lot of really valuable lessons to learn from this. And but the good news is they did say that they will release the equipment. We can get our hands on the lasts and the outsoles and get them over to a factory that we know and trust, that we can control, and guys like Gary and Jack can go stand over this project. That it stands a good because the good news is the shoes that were brought in, they sold, and the brand image is pretty good. The guy, he's got a good thing going, so this project will work. And I was usually, for me as the shoemaker, the sales and marketing, to me, that's a whole nother, that's the hard part. Um, to me, making the shoes is the easy part if you follow it correctly. So the key thing here is to, number one, it goes back to make sure that you're with a factory that's reputable, that you're actually with the factory. And this ended up being a trading company or loosely affiliated something, wasn't working directly with the factory. So that is why the second production run went to another facility. Purchase terms, yeah, 50 down and 50 upon inspection. That's what you should do. Is a factory ever going to give you terms? Hey, maybe in a few years, you could pay 50% down, and that 50% down, just make sure that the factory gets the material and the labor. There's no profit in it. They'll still lose money if you walk away from your 50% down, but at least it protects them from losing everything, and it also protects you, so that when it comes time to inspect the shoes, the factory hasn't been paid. So they're going to be motivated to A, make good shoes, and B, if there's an issue, to repair it. Now the other thing too is that if you don't have a developer that you trust, that is outside from the factory, a guy like Gary or Jack, to go look in on the shoes before they're made, right? Because if you just show up on the last day, there could be some sort of catastrophic problems that inspection and reprocessing can't solve. But if you got a guy like Gary or Jack looking in on it every day or at those critical milestones, then you know that when you get to assembly day, you're not assembling huge problems, right? So finding the factory, getting purchase terms, getting inspection, and then that was the other part too, is that the third party inspection. And I've worked with factories 10 years, the same factory, and never had a problem. But once in a while, something will happen, and it's an accident. It's not malicious. It's not that they set out to cheap it or whatever. It's just a human error. Humans are doing this stuff. Whether it was a mistake on the spec sheet or some missed procedure, just it's inevitable. If you're in this business long enough, there will be honest mistakes. And I just remember being on the assembly line, and I was lucky. I was there. And I was lucky. It's not luck. I made a conscious choice to be there, looking at the first production run. And if I'd been there 3 weeks later, it would have been even huge disaster. But once in a while, you have to literally pull the red handle and tell everyone to stop. And in that case, in the case that I'm explaining, we found a major problem. It was totally fixable. We had to actually call some product back and send, do some retrofit on it. But in the end, yeah, it cost some time and money, but it wasn't a huge disaster. But being there to see it is what saved it. If I hadn't been there, it would have been a real problem. So to not have a third party inspector, and what I'm getting at is that was a totally honest mistake. Even when I had to look at it, I had to look twice to understand what was going on. And like I said, that was an honest mistake. Everyone was operating in good faith, and it was still hard. So if a factory is just kind of winging it, um, and if they're not used to making the high quality good stuff, you're going to end up with these problems. So like I said, even when factories are trying hard to do their best, you can still have issues. So you got to have a third party inspector. That's just it. It's not negotiable. In this case, and that gives you the confidence that when you pay your money and that container door clangs shut and the shoes are on the way, that you can make promises to your customers that they're going to get a good pair of shoes, and that that outsole is going to stay on in 6 months. Because yeah, you've got a good looking shoe, but if the customer puts it on and starts wearing it and the bottom falls off, You're dead meat just the same. So that's it. Nightmare scenario. It's not hopeless, but it's some incredibly valuable lessons. I hope someday I can share with you. Excuse me. I hope someday I can share with you the brand and introduce you to the client here. Actually, I'm trying to see if their shoe is visible in the background here. No, it's not. Nice try. But that said, again, this thing starts out at an ultimate nightmare scenario. Like I said, I don't know how it really. I mean, I have a good idea how it's going to end because once we get control of the equipment and we get our team guys like Jack and Gary involved, I'll be going into China over this summer to look in on this stuff. That we will get this project turned around and we'll be able to get this brand growing the way that its owner really wants it to. So hey, I appreciate your time, folks. And if you stayed this long, thank you. If you have a brand with a problem, please, you can send me an email to the Shoe Dog at Shoemakers Academy. My name is Wade Motawi. You can look me up on LinkedIn. My email address and my meeting link is all over the website. Check out our books and courses. We can help you. And it kind of doesn't matter where you're at. If you're just getting started, awesome. Let's get it on the ground floor. Make sure you're doing it right. If the shoes outsoles are falling off and you need help, we can help you with that situation too. So I appreciate it, folks, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.